Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back to another episode of Soul Podcasting, where soulful strategy meets creative clarity to help you amplify your voice and create lasting impact through podcasting. And I'm your host, Demetria Zinga. I'm a podcast coach, a brand storyteller, and the founder of the Soul Podcasting Collective. We support visionary leaders and creatives in launching podcasts that don't just sound good, but they feel aligned and they flow with your purpose and they create legacy. I do talk about legacy a great deal on this show because that means so much to me in the work that I do, and I'm hoping to help you create legacy with your podcast as well. So today's topic is a bit of a gut check, and it's one that I wish someone had told me earlier in my journey. And we're talking about a mindset shift that could mean the difference between your podcast quietly fading out after 5 rushed episodes or becoming a consistent legacy building platform that expands your brand and transforms your audience. And here's the shift. There's a difference between doing a podcast and becoming a podcaster. One is action and the other is identity. So if you've been treating your podcast like a side task or side hustle, or if you're stuck in perfection paralysis before you actually launch your show, this is your invitation to think bigger and to go deeper. And we also want to reframe how you show up on the mic. So let's start with the obvious. Most people launch their podcasts like they're launching a YouTube channel or an Instagram Reels series. It's just content, right? It's just marketing. It's a task. It's another thing to do. So you make your checklist. Mic, check. Host platform, check. Canva cover art, check. First few episodes, check. All right, cool, all done. But let me tell you, when I started podcasting 2 decades ago, I did it with no strategy. I did it with no confidence and definitely no checklist. I was a new mom trying to keep it all together, recording voice notes during nap time and uploading them from my bedroom closet. It wasn't polished, but it was real and it was me, and people felt that. And what I learned through that messy beginning is that podcasting is not just another piece of content. It's a container for your growth. It's a practice, a platform, a presence, all those things that contain who you are from the past, who you are in the present, and who you're going to be in the future. And when you treat your show like just another thing to do, your energy will always feel rushed. You're going to feel pressured and really detached from your purpose. But when you step into the role of a podcaster, not just someone who podcasts, you begin to embody the voice and the leadership that your brand actually needs. All right, my friend, before we dive into this next step, let's just take a deep breath together. Because you know what? You're doing this. You're showing up for your vision, and that's what matters. So go ahead, vibe with me for a sec. We're going to step into what I like to call our CEO time. And I want you to let this beat remind you that you're not just a content creator. You're building legacy. You're leading with purpose. And this next part is where strategy meets soul. So let's get into it. Talk about how identity shifts everything for you. Let's unpack the real difference here, because doing a podcast is equal to delivering episodes, right? You're doing the work, doing a podcast. But being a podcaster equals owning a mission. And the difference is massive because a podcaster will speak with intention, not just volume. A podcaster develops a point of view and evolves it over time. Designs content around impact and not just visibility. We talked about going viral and what that actually means a few episodes ago. Go back and listen when you get a moment on episode 60. As podcasters, we're always designing content that impacts. And then we also learn how to trust our voice, even when downloads don't skyrocket overnight. And here's the secret. You don't need to wait to hit a certain number of listeners to become a podcaster. You decide to become one. You decide how, you decide when, you decide the way you show up. It's just a mental switch, and it's the moment you stop treating your podcast like a chore and you start treating it like a calling. You stop saying, I have to post this one more episode, and you start saying, I get to lead this conversation. You see, that's a huge transformation, a huge mental shift. So remember, we're building from identity, and that equals your long-term success. I'm just going to be honest with you. Podcasting does take work, a lot of work. There are logistics, there's editing, there's content planning, there's even the keyword research if you choose to focus on your SEO and how your content shows up organically through search. There are the things you need to do to make sure that you are visible on social media. So it's not always glamorous because there is a lot of work behind the scenes. But you know what's even harder? It's doing all that work from a place of doubt and burnout or obligation. In case you didn't know about my YouTube channel, I do have a channel called Demetria Zinga Solopreneur Lifestyle. And it's where I share all of my videos about being a solopreneur, but also about the things that I enjoy in content creation, content strategy, and specifically, and especially as of lately, podcasting. So you can find all of my podcast episodes, if you didn't know already, on my YouTube channel. They are located there, and you can watch many of them that have a visual element. And also my audio only podcasts are hosted there as well. Recently, as of this recording, I uploaded a video called Podcast Without Burnout. These are podcast consistency tips, and it just goes along with everything that I'm sharing here on the podcast as well. But I have a video for you. If you'd like to watch it, I'll place a link to that in the show notes so that you can see what exactly I mean by taking your time in this podcasting journey and giving yourself room to grow. When you build from identity, the things that shift are the fact that you stop second guessing your content and you start trusting your gut instincts. You also start creating systems that support your vision instead of scrambling every week at the last minute to see what you're going to publish. And of course, I talk about that in the video as well. You'll also begin to speak with more freedom and flow because you know who you are and you know who you serve. So it's easier to show up. This shift isn't just mindset, it is strategy. And at Soul Podcasting Collective, some of the things that I like to do is coach my clients to anchor their shows in 4 things. One is voice clarity. Like, what is the deeper message behind what you're bringing on your podcast? The second is brand alignment. How does the show elevate your brand story? Thirdly, I like to look at your platform positioning. How does your show reflect your thought leadership? And fourthly, I like to help you with your consistency through rhythm. You're creating rhythms in your life, not pressure. So how do you keep going sustainably? Because again, you're not building for the purpose of virality, but you're building for legacy. So I include all of that in my coaching because I think it's important for me to help my clients to know where they're going with their podcast and how they can be consistent with the work that they feel called to do. And if this is something you're interested in working with me, I and my agency can work with you and help you to get where you need to be. To find out more about my coaching, you can go to soulpodcasting.com/services. All right, so let's have a real conversation now about the shift that you need to have in order to make the kind of change that I'm talking about today. This is the part where most podcasters get stuck or frustrated, but it's also where the gold is. And after you've launched, or even if you've been podcasting for a while, there comes a point when you've got to pause and audit. And I'm talking about taking an honest, loving, but firm look at what's working and what's not working for you. What's just a bunch of fluff that you could definitely streamline or take away altogether. And listen, I've been there. Let me tell you a quick story. A few years ago, I was running one of my older podcasts. I had all the right gear. The content was somewhat semi-polished, I think. I had guests lined up. It looked good from the outside, but after quite a few episodes in, and I'm talking maybe 40, 50, I started to feel a little bit off about that show. And I was showing up, but I was not showing up, if you know what I mean. My voice was there, but my soul wasn't all in. So I did what I now coach my clients to do. I hit pause, not forever, just long enough to ask the hard questions. And I listened back to some of my old episodes. I read through the feedback. And more importantly, I sat with my vision all over again. And I asked myself, does this still reflect the legacy that I'm building? Is this aligned with where I'm being called to go? Spoiler alert, it actually wasn't. So I had to take a pivot and I got clear on the why all over again. I let go of topics that felt like busy work. I leaned into the ones that lit me up, even if they felt a little bit scary or deeper than I thought my audience expected or would want to engage in with me. And what I want to encourage you to do in this season is to audit and refine your podcast. I like to do this somewhere around the summer. So that would be going into season 3, because for me, that is kind of the midway mark in my podcasting journey for the year. And it helps me to take a nice clean break, see what I'm doing, see where I want to go for the rest of the year, right? For me, it's September through December is where I'm making any final edits and changes that need to be done for the direction and flow of the show. So my summertime is usually busy thinking about how I want to pivot and make those changes. So here's what that looks like practically for me. I re-listened to a few of my latest episodes with a notepad in hand. And when I say that, I just mean, my notes, my digital notes. So for me, that is either a Google Doc that I've pulled up or it is my Notion. And I write down what I felt strong and where I've rambled or where I felt unsure of myself. So just re-listening to those episodes and kind of taking note of the things that I wasn't so certain about on those shows. And then I look at my analytics, not just my downloads, but listener retention. Are people staying to the end of that episode? Are they dropping off? When they give me feedback, are they telling me that they listened to the specific episode and what stood out to them in that show? That means a lot to me. It's not just numbers, it's not just the analytics, but it's also what my listeners are telling me they liked. And then I revisit my mission. Does my show still represent my purpose? Does it represent my zone of genius, my core message? Or have I evolved, but my content hasn't caught up to the way I've evolved? So I have to look at all of these things because, again, we are multidimensional beings that are constantly changing, evolving, and we can't create an entity like a podcast where we're showing up in our full selves and expect our podcast to remain static. So even if we have planned out months in advance of content, we have to remember that content may shift and change according to our stage and place in life. So maybe 6 months from now, we're revisiting the content that we thought we were going to put out 6 months ago. If we are batch recorders like I am, we have to think about these things and say, okay, well, maybe I do need to make a pivot. So maybe this recording that I did 3 months ago does not reflect where I am today. So those are some things really to think about as we're creating content, revisiting our mission and understanding how our content needs to evolve to where we are. And then again, as always, asking our audience, send a simple poll or post a question on Instagram stories. Ask what they want more of, what episode impacted them the most. Sometimes their feedback will really surprise you. So be sure to get your audience engaged in answering those questions and then refine your format. Maybe you need shorter episodes. Maybe it's time for a series format. Maybe you want to experiment with storytelling or bring on some coaching style solo episodes. Maybe you want to start interviewing. Figure out how you want to refine your formats. And I've done that quite a bit on this show. For those of you who've been with me from the beginning, you know that I've been a solo episode only show or a solo show for many years. So podcasting was kind of on a once a week and then once bi-weekly and then once a month publication schedule up until just about a few months ago. So that's where we started really upping our game and bringing 2 episodes a week and then eventually 3 and then Probably from here on out after the summer, I'm going to drop back down to 2 a week. But in doing so, I've also changed our format, and we went from solo only episodes to including interviews. And it's been such a great way to bring a different dynamic to this show. And I had been planning to do that for the longest, but finally got around to it at about episode 42, I believe, with Angela Ross. It was a wonderful kickoff to having an interview segment on this show. And I really am glad that I did that, because I met so many podcasters and I've had conversations here that I would never have had the opportunity to had I not brought on interviews. So I'm glad that I made that pivot. And so it did change the structure of this podcast, but I'm glad for that. I'm so happy that I explored that aspect of it and didn't remain only solo. And so I enjoy solo episodes, but I also enjoy the interviewing part as well. So you have to kind of figure out what you enjoy the most. For me, I honestly still really enjoy solo episodes. And so that's why I come back twice a week with my solo shows and deliver my content that way, because I am a teacher at heart and I love coaching and teaching. And part of what I do here is to motivate, inspire, and coach you one-on-one. And so that aspect of this podcast will always remain that way, even with an occasional interview. And I say all that to say that you may have to look at your formats to see what you want to experiment with. And maybe you want to change things up a little bit. And by all means, do that. This doesn't mean that your show is wrong the way it is. It means that you're growing. And that's the best kind of pivot you can have. When you know your podcast isn't just content, it's a living, breathing extension of your voice. So don't be afraid to refine. Let your podcast evolve as you evolve. This step, it's the beginning of a deeper connection between you and your audience, and it's what takes you from being just another podcaster to being a thought leader with a legacy. So now that we've talked about the mindset, let's get practical. How do you actually begin to shift from I'm doing a podcast to I am a podcaster? And here are 5 intentional practices that I recommend. And it's not just to help you produce more consistently, but to help you show up more authentically and powerfully. The first is that you're going to reintroduce yourself with authority. So let's start with how you frame yourself in your own show. Every time you get on the mic, you're reinforcing your brand, even if it feels repetitive to you. It's someone's first episode. Every episode is a new handshake, a new open door. So don't mumble through your intro. Don't shrink into your bio. Speak it with conviction. Say your name, and then say what you do, who helps, tell who you help to do, and then tell what that transformation is that you offer. Because your introduction isn't fluff, it's leadership positioning. And when you state clearly what you do and why it matters, you're stepping into thought leadership. You're giving people a reason to trust your voice from the first 10 seconds or so of your episode. And this shift alone trains you to take your own platform seriously. In the past, I used to really hate doing intros. I'd rush through them like they didn't matter. And then one day it occurred to me that when a listener DM'd me and said, I didn't know you were a coach. I thought you were just giving tips. I didn't know you were at the time a web designer. I didn't know you were this or that, and I thought, wow, why am I not introducing that? Why am I not talking about these things in my bio? So let me introduce myself clearly and say who I am and what I do so that it's very clear to my listener and they're not confused about what I'm offering and why I'm passionate about what I bring to the table. For someone who is an introvert or ambivert, who's mostly leaning introvert and empath, it's very easy for me to keep quiet, not say very much, stay on the kind of, low key end of things and not really declare my identity on anything because I want to be all things to all people. But that's just not possible and it's just not effective. And also, if I'm stepping into leadership, I need to embrace that 100%. And so the stage of life that I'm in currently is one that allows me to be an introvert, to be who I am, to enjoy my solitude, my rituals, my workflows, the things that make me happy in my space, in my personality, owning that fully, but yet also fully owning the fact that I am a leader in the space that I wish to be a leader in. And I'm taking responsibility for that and I'm not apologizing for it. So as I'm moving into this space, It's been kind of a dichotomy because I've had to start to learn to embrace the part of me that wants to rise to the top while still giving a nod to the side of me and the parts of me that enjoy my comfort zones. It's almost kind of like a past meets future me kind of handshake, and it's a little awkward right now for me. But I'm sharing that with you just to let you know that no matter what your personality type, or no matter whether you feel a bit on the shy side or you're not used to tooting your own horn, so to speak, that as you develop your leadership skills through podcasting, you're going to start getting used to being clear about your identity, who you are, what your mission is, what you bring to the table, and not be afraid to share that with your audience. And you're not going to shrink as much as you used to the more you get used to sharing what you do. It's just a matter of becoming accustomed to those things. All right. So another thing I want to share is to develop a ritual, not just a workflow. I just mentioned briefly workflows and rituals. A lot of podcasters focus on workflows like scripting, editing, uploading. Yes, that's all necessary, but I want you to go deeper. So what is your ritual? What helps you get into the zone creatively, spiritually, energetically? Maybe you journal a few affirmations before you record. Maybe you light a candle. This is all me. This is stuff that I do. Okay, so maybe you're doing something completely different, but I play instrumental music that calms my nervous system. I have to block out the same hour every week. And maybe that's what you have to do as well. Or maybe depending on, your stage of life and what you're having to deal with, maybe you have to block out a different time every week, but treat that time like a sacred appointment. Ritual is what separates content creators from intentional communicators. So for me, I take 5 minutes before I hit record and I check in with myself. I say, what do I need to say today? Where is this episode coming from? Is this obligation? Is this overflow? Like, I need to know where I stand so that I don't feel rushed and I don't feel pressured. And that kind of check-in makes a huge difference. Even if I'm pre-recording episodes and batching in advance, I still ask myself these questions. So it's not just about content, it's about alignment. You want to stop speaking to the algorithm and you want to speak to a real human. So I want you to imagine that your favorite listener is your person. That's the one who gets your message, even if they haven't found you yet. And when you record your episodes, you're speaking directly to them. Forget the numbers, forget the algorithm, forget trying to impress everyone on LinkedIn. Podcasting is an intimate medium. It's you and one other person. Their earbuds in, headphones on, absorbing your words. When you speak like that, like you're mentoring one person or having coffee with someone who really needs encouragement, your tone begins to shift. Your flow improves. You connect with that audience, right? That kind of connection, that's what creates listeners who come back. Not your perfect editing, not your big guest names, but relatability that builds loyalty. And that's a reason why I like to continue my solo episodes here, to continue building that loyalty and relatability with you. Now, I know some of you love the adrenaline of last minute uploads, but if you want to step into your identity as a podcast and thought leader, it's time to create systems and not chaos. So I have 2 more tips for you. And one of them, of course, is going to be batching. I say it all the time, but I say it in love because even if you're not a consistent batcher, just being able to create those systems is going to help you out a lot. You don't have to batch your content if that doesn't work for you. Maybe you flow better showing up at the mic when you're passionate, when you feel inspired, and that's okay. But for many of us, batching our content is something that helps us to protect our peace. So for us, that would be recording a couple of episodes, 2 to 3 in one sitting, so our ideas stay in flow. Maybe planning content about a month out or so we're not scrambling every week, or maybe just a couple of weeks out. Repurposing episodes into multiple formats like blog posts, Instagram Reels, audiograms, carousels, so you get mileage from your voice. And think of it like this. Each episode you record isn't just a podcast, it's a brand asset. And that's how CEOs operate. That's how creators build legacy. So all of this is to help you to get the support that you need. You weren't meant to do this all by yourself. And this might be the most important thing that I've said on this entire episode. If you're going to own your voice, stay consistent, and grow your platform, you need support. I need support. We all need it. So we are going to admit that today as entrepreneurs as podcasters that we need support. That might look like a podcast coach, and I'm waving my hand here. Hi, I know a great one. Or it might be an editor to handle your post-production. Again, our agency is here to help you with that aspect of it. It could be that you farm out a virtual assistant who helps you to upload, to schedule, or repurpose your content, or a creative accountability partner to keep you moving along the podcasting journey. Trying to do every little thing yourself, script, record, edit, publish, promote, that can lead to burnout. Doesn't have to. There's many of us who have been doing this on our own for so many years. So it doesn't have to lead to burnout, but it can. And that's when podcasting becomes a burden instead of a blessing. Investing in support isn't extra. It's what allows you to stay in your lane as the visionary, the voice, and the creative lead. So I'm going to bring this full circle here. If you've been doing, and I say that in air quotes, doing a podcast, and it feels exhausting, unsustainable, disconnected, all of those things that we don't want, that doesn't mean that you're failing. It just means that you haven't fully stepped into the role that you're meant to hold. The moment you decide to become a podcaster, everything shifts. You speak differently, you create with conviction, you lead your audience instead of chasing your audience. And if you want help stepping into that, my friend, I've got you. Inside my podcast coaching program, I help creators like you build podcasts with clarity, flow, and strategy. We don't just talk mic settings, we talk voice, alignment, and long-term vision. So if you want to book a clarity call with me, head over to soulpodcasting.com/services or send me a DM at Soul Podcasting on Instagram, and let's create something that actually reflects you. You're not just here to produce content. You're here to use your voice to build something real. So press record, my friend, show up fully, and become the podcaster you're called to be. And until next time, stay soulful, stay consistent, and own your voice like the creative CEO that you are. Happy podcasting.